GearNetwork.com.
The following is a presentation of the Gear Radio Network.
1, 2, 3, 4.
I believe it's a big challenge for our building to keep things in perspective and to, if we're going to get addicted to anything, let's get addicted to the process.
And with that, we welcome you to Trust the Podcast, home of the back-to-back AFC.
Fourth time.
Yeah, boy! AFC East Champion Buffalo Bills. This podcast, powered by Better Live Than Dead and the Gear Radio Network. This is episode 146.
Episode 146, people. The 4 in 146 denotes the fourth straight AFC East title. See what I did there, Ryan?
I love it. It's the Buffalo Bills at the Miami Dolphins. I am Ryan Wolfe, joined by John Cimino. As always, you can hear us on betterliveThanDead.com, GearNetwork.com, and wherever else you listen to podcasts. Make sure to hit the subscribe button as well to stay up to date on the latest podcast. As you can tell, myself and John, very jovial mood here on Tuesday evening, talking the Buffalo Bills. Talking the Buffalo Bills beating the Miami Dolphins, talking the Buffalo Bills clinching the AFC East and continuing their improbable run to the back to the top, I should say, of the AFC. John, jumping right into the rundown, the Buffalo Bills defeated the Miami Dolphins 21-14. Mm-hmm. They being the Bills improved to 11-6 on the season, clinching the AFC East and the 2 seed in the AFC.
And not to cut you off there, but man, a month and a half ago, what were we talking about?
Believe me, I'm going to get to those statistics. Don't worry.
It's an incredible run in spite of everything that's been going on. Kudos.
This has been
over there at One Bills Drive.
This has been a case study on how to save your job for Sean McDermott. There's no doubt about it, because
you are not kidding. But also, too, it's a case study on how the team rallies around their coach. You can tell this team genuinely likes McDermott. They have to in order to be able
better
to,
or for worse. Yeah, I mean, we saw what happened. I was going to talk about this later in the podcast, but I canned it. You see what happened in New Orleans, where Dennis Allen called for the victory formation. Jameis Winston, always aloof but always lovable, decided to call in the huddle. Let's have a vote. Should we run it in? They said yes. They overruled the coach. And there was a bit of a kerfuffle there because of that. But you don't see that stuff happening with the Buffalo Bills because they're bought in, man. They are all the true one heartbeat of this team. It's never been better display than this past week. Buffalo's 11-plus wins marked the fourth straight season of doing that, tying the longest streak in team history. They did it from 1990 to 93. Only the third time since 1970 that the AFC East title was determined by a head-to-head matchup in the final week of the season without any reliance on other games. It also happened in 1981 and 1997. As mentioned, the fourth consecutive AFC East title and fifth straight playoff berth for the Buffalo Bills. Now, John, when the Bills were 6-6 back, I think it was right after Thanksgiving, they had a 0.1% chance of getting the 2 seed in the AFC. According to Opta Stats at OPTA Stats, since the NFL began seeding teams for the playoffs in 1975, the 2023 Buffalo Bills are the only team to be at or below 500 with 5 or few games remaining and yet still earn the top 2 seed.
That is, I'm scrolling down a little more and seeing the other thing you put there from the juice betting, but
these stats that are
one-on-one.
Real quick, sorry. These stats that are copied and pasted from screenshots off of my phone are our trusty self-anointed intern, Chris. He was the text chain was flying off between myself and Chris during the game, and he was hooking me up with good stuff for the podcast, as I also was looking for good stuff for the podcast.
I like it. I like it, especially since most of the time during these games, I'm inebriated thinking of the comedic aspect of
That's fair.
Of every game.
John,
I'm looking for the comedy. I'm looking for the funny and all of that.
Comedy, Christian comedy, comedy. Huh? Sorry again. I'm jumping. I'm so excited. I gotta cut it out.
Dag nabbit.
Christian Wilkins. There is a video of him grabbing at Josh Allen's penis multiple times during the game on Sunday.
All right. I didn't necessarily mean that kind. I didn't necessarily mean that kind of comedy, but
that's apparently a tactic Dick in the tactic. But I'm groaned from the crowd.
All right, Ryan. To go take the hook. You are off the Showtime at Apollo there stage there. But to go back to this Optastat here for the Buffalo Bills be one of one in anything that is that kind of that is of that level, that is of that magnitude. That tells you to be the only team at or below 500 with 5 or fewer games remaining and earn a top 2 seed. That is something that is so incredibly rare in the 100+ year history of the NFL. This is one of one. You're seeing this for the very first time. This now is like the benchmark. Like if another team does this 2 years, 3 years, 10 years down the line, they're going to go back to the 2023-2024 Buffalo Bills as this team joins the 2023-24 Buffalo Bills as the only team to do this, to accomplish this feat. That is a massive, major, unbelievably impressive feat that the entire coaching staff, all the players, the entire organization as a whole should be very proud of. Yeah. And that is and that will segue into what the next screenshot is that you have. I'll let obviously you read
John,
that, but
John, it's the night
wild.
Before Christmas. 'Twas the night before Christmas.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it was really 'twas the night of December 3rd.
Twas the eve of my 43rd birthday.
Thank you at the Juice Betting. And John, after this segment, I will stop cutting you off again. I was trying to this entire day, breaking down the fourth wall. One of my favorite sayings. If you got it on your bingo card, check the box off. I've been trying to calm myself down because I am so excited about what is to come for the Buffalo Bills.
You are a true homer. Like you're a true homer. I
am able to separate the fan from the journalist, and when the kickoff, like say for instance,
there have been times this podcast season though where I challenge that a little bit.
It's all for you, John. It is. All
I
for
appreciate.
You.
That's cool that it's all for me, but I hope to bring it down a little bit and kind of bring it back to earth.
When shit hits the fan, I channel my inner JC Money and I try to lean into it a little. Where normally I'll sit back and I'll say, yeah, that's really funny, or yeah, we could probably have a lot of fun with that. But also, let's be real here. The gloves are off at that. Like mid-season, you go back and listen to Trust the Podcast when the Bills were 6-6, and you listen now, it's a completely different mood. We're incredibly jovial at this point in time because, again, John, you being a Jets fan, having gone through it as a Jets fan, being Bills Mafia's favorite Jets fan, myself being a lifelong Bills fan, we've seen a lot. We've been through a lot. Mm-hmm. None of this is surprising to me, as crazy as that sounds, because again, they were 6-6. They had no choice but to win out, and they won out. And I just sit back here and laugh and go, because they would.
Right. Exactly.
It would be too easy to lose and miss the playoffs. It would make more sense to paint yourself in a corner. And it's really funny, John. I didn't put this in the notes here, but let me pop this up really quick. Mm-hmm. I'm going to go to Sean McDermott's Wikipedia page very quickly, because there was one point in time earlier this season.
Well, Wikipedia, the source of truth for everybody.
The Buffalo Bills in 2019 were 10-6. In 2020, they were 13-3. In 2021, they were 11-6. 2022, they were 13-3. This season, they were 6-6. And I thought to myself, God damn it, that's a streak that's going to end. And I was wrong. The Buffalo Bills are 11-6. So in 2024, I'm calling my shot right now. The Buffalo Bills are going 13-3 in 2024, because I am not a mathematician. But I do
you're not because there's 17 games in the season now, so it's either 13-4 or 14-3.
Well, give me 14, dog. They're going to win 13 games. They're going to win 14. I don't know. I'm just looking at the stats here. I'm just looking at the numbers, and I'll tell you what, the trends are going to continue, because this Buffalo Bills team has come together. It's crazy because, as at the Juice Betting points out, it was the night of December 3rd. The Eagles were 10-2. The Dolphins were 9-3. The Bills were 6-6. Only one of these teams won their division.
And that's insane to me. All things considering how high, like you talk about the Philadelphia Eagles. Let's talk about them for a quick second. How far did they fall? I mean, they were the darling of the NFL at 10-1. You know what I mean? Not even just before they were 10-2. They were the darling of the NFL at 10-1. And at that point, it was like, it is the Eagles and everybody else, right? The Super Bowl revenge tour. There's no Super Bowl hangover there. Well, boy, did that turn around for them in a hurry. And I don't see them even getting out of the first round of the NFC playoffs. To be honest with you,
we'll keep that for a little later. But yeah, a team like the Eagles, everybody comes across some adversity at some point in time, and it's much like we talk about on the Better Live Than Dead podcast, John. It's all about how you respond to that adversity. When you're a pitcher coming in and you're throwing, to a sub 3 ERA, and then all of a sudden you have a stretch of games where you're giving up 5-6 runs a game. When they adjust to you, you have to readjust to them. It seems like the league figured out what the Eagles' weakness was and has been exploiting it, and the Eagles have not been able to come back from that and figure out how to patch the holes, the cracks in the foundation, if you will, and that has just been exacerbated even worse.
Absolutely.
But the problem with the Eagles is that their defense has been awful for most of the season, and when their offense is on, they are hard to beat. But it's much like the Bills we saw before when, hey, look at, if the offense shows up and puts up 40, you're not going to beat them. But if the offense shows up and puts up 20, it's probably a good chance you're going to go home with a win and they're going to walk out with a loss because they simply can't stop teams. And again, I don't disagree with your assessment with the Eagles. I think we're definitely going to talk about that coming up, but
sure. But I again, that also feeds that also just jostled this, and I'm going to forget it if I don't say it now, but that is a testament to it's almost like it went in reverse with Buffalo. Like what you just talked about with the Eagles there, that was Buffalo in reverse. Because if you remember in the beginning of the season, we weren't necessarily talking about the offense and their production. It was the defense and how porous they were. And they made some kind of adjustment, and it was definitely for the better. And no one's been able to pick up on that. And that is why the Bills have been that is a large part why the Bills are on this streak and were able to win out like they have been, because the defense has kept them in the game.
I'm going to contradict myself, John, a lot by saying this, but because earlier this season we were certainly calling for Sean McDermott to be fired. But this streak has shown that the Buffalo Bills and Sean McDermott directly has grown, has learned, has developed his game to where he's not going out and just blitzing all of the time, or you go, hey, they're going to send a blitz on this play and they're going to get nuked, or they're playing 10, 15 yards off the ball. Kind of like what the Dolphins did when they refused to give up the touchdown to the Bills and they played 8 men on the line, or I think it was 8 men in the end zone, but then gave up. They gave up the quick first down to the Bills. I mean, there were, again, throughout the game, questionable calls. The Bills should have got the call on the helmet to helmet at the goal line, which concussed Ty Johnson. We'll talk about that. There were a few other things where you're just like, what the hell is going on here? But again, it's responding to that adversity. And Sean McDermott has shown he is a grown man, a better coach. And honestly,
he's a man. He's 40.
And honestly,
actually, he's older than that.
Honestly, John, sometimes you got to have a mercy kill, like we talked about, and firing Ken Dorsey. They fired Ken Dorsey at the right time because it lit a spark under that team to say, hey, he may not be the reason that we're doing bad, but someone's got to get fired, and he really is the only guy to get fired.
Well, I think
we're at the point now where Joe Brady, that interim tag will probably be removed, and he'll probably be the offensive coordinator moving forward.
Well, yeah, and again, I don't think Ken Dorsey was the full problem, but in the same, when you run that same stagnant offense, clearly the league caught up to them. And it's not that Josh Allen wasn't, that Josh Allen and the crew were not able to perform. They just weren't able to perform like they're accustomed to because they were running the same things, and the league will catch up to you quickly. That's what happened there. The league caught up to them quickly when they made that change, and you saw Brady kind of, change the scheme and incorporate James Cook a lot more, the tight end, Dalton Kincaid a lot more. And instead of just, huck and chuck and throwing it out to Diggs or Davis and hoping that they're open. Once they made those like 2 small adjustments, it opened up so many other things on the offense. And while Steph Diggs may not have had his, 100, his he was kind of trending downward in terms of the stats, it balanced out with being able to, supplement that with other pieces and get those other pieces into play, forcing the opposing defensive coordinator to really adjust their game plans that they were not prepared to do. And that's a large part. I mean, this is the epitome. If you are looking as a coach, if you are a coach looking at how to face adversity, make necessary changes, implement new strategies, and execute them and coach to them, look no further than what this team has done in this entire season from a coaching. I'm not talking about the players. I'm talking about from the coaching perspective. Being leaders of the business and the normal 9 to 5, Ryan, you and I can really take the sports fan out of it, and as leaders appreciate what went into that, because it's a very, very, very hard thing to do in any avenue. And to be able to do that in the professional football world, where it's littered with a bunch of adults that are being paid a lot of money to play a game that kids play for free, right? Egos, this, that, and the other thing. To be able to, have a leadership group within that Buffalo Bills organization to navigate those changes, make the changes, the necessary adjustments and tweaks that needed, execute a new strategy, and execute it at a point where they were written for dead, to turn that around and be the number 2 seed and win. I mean, that's admirable, regardless of how the Bills finish. And I'm not saying they're going to win the Super Bowl, and I'm not saying that they're not. I'm saying that regardless of what happens from this point forward, this team needs to be remembered for the adversity that they fought back from. And I think it needs to be commended quite a bit. Like I would nominate at this point now, as crazy as it sounds, because a month and a half ago we were talking about, is the process over? Sean McDermott has to be at least considered a candidate for Coach of the Year, in my opinion.
I'm sure he will get some rumblings for that. I think, again, probably a guy like DeMeco Ryans will win that, just simply because of what he did in his first year as a head coach. But I don't disagree with you, because, again, it's difficult to get people to buy in to a simple, to the same mindset, to the same path, no matter the level, like you mentioned, John. And I mean, the comeback that Buffalo had this season so far to this point, they joined Kansas City as the only teams to win 10 plus games and are in a playoff berth in each of the last 5 years. It's the third time in franchise history Buffalo's won 4 consecutive division titles. They did it from 1963 to 1966 and 1988 to 1991. Buffalo, they improved to a league best 19-2 in December and January regular season games since 2020. They've won 14 straight December. Yes, sorry, I was reading that wrong. They've won 14 straight December, January games, tying Green Bay, who did that in 2019 through 2022 for the second longest streak in the NFL since 1970. San Diego, at the time, the Superchargers, had a 19-game streak in 2006 to 2010. The last loss the Bills had again in December or January was December 12th, 2021 at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And John, since 2020, Buffalo has a plus 275-point differential in division games, the highest by any team. Dallas comes in second at plus 248. So again, Buffalo likes to lay it on thick when they play the divisional opponents, and this was no different. Before we jump into our 3 big things and talk about that, though, I want to let everybody know 3 big things are brought to you by puckluck.com, your one-stop resource for all your National Hockey League sports betting action. Puckluck provides win percentages and score projections for each and every National Hockey League game to tilt the ice in your favor. Not sure what to bet or just in a rut? Not to worry. Puckluck also provides expert picks to get the puck bouncing your way. Please note, though, puckluck.com, no way affiliated with the National Hockey League, its teams, or the NHLPA. Puckluck.com provides data related to gambling and cannot guarantee the success of any suggested or related wagers. As always, please gamble responsibly. Now, John, kind of mix and match in the podcast up this week. And the first of the 3 big things, we're going to wrap up the offense and the defense. Pointed out on Twitter, and I chopped the screen name off accidentally in my screenshot, so I do apologize. Whoever posted this, a brilliant way to look at it. Make no mistake about this game. It was a blowout. Aside from the score, the Bills only winning by 7, Buffalo outpossessed Miami 38-07 to 21-53.
They've been very good about that all season. They've been managing the clock, keeping the time of possession in several of their games, and that is key. If you don't, not to sound like John Madden here, but If the other team doesn't have the ball, they can't score.
Well, and that is very true. And we have seen teams like the Bills earlier this year where they don't have the ball, but they are very they're like mercenaries when they have the ball. Yeah, we only had the ball for 20 minutes, but we scored on every single possession. Good luck trying to beat us there. But here, Buffalo, 473 total yards to Miami's 275. Buffalo had 345 passing yards to Miami's 167. 128 rushing yards to Miami's 108. Buffalo had 26 first downs. Miami had 16. And even though Buffalo had 3 turnovers, John, they still had 77 total plays to Miami's 48. Again, the score does not tell everything here. The Buffalo Bills had a day on Sunday night. Josh Allen, 30 for 38, 359 yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 picks with 15 carries for 67 yards. Before we beat the drum about the interceptions, one of the interceptions was essentially an arm punt where the player ran out of the end zone and ended up getting tackled at within the 5-yard line, I believe, 5 or less. It was a very, very stupid decision by Eli Apple to run it out. The second one, where Gabe Davis slipped and fell and potentially hurt himself there, that ends up being a 15-yard gain for the Buffalo Bills. Now, I understand it goes in the book as a pick, but when you throw that ball on 4th down, goes into the end zone, they kneel it, they come out to the 20. The Bills are, I believe, at the 35 when they had the play. So essentially, it's a net gain of 15 yards for the Bills, despite the fact that Miami gets the ball. So consider that in your conversation about interceptions and Josh.
And here's where I'm at with Josh Allen and the interceptions. Yes, would we ideally want to see that cut down? Sure. But there's Josh Allen throwing interceptions, and then there's, let's just say, Zach Wilson throwing interceptions, right? What is the besides the, that being the similarity there, what other similarities are there between those two in those scenarios? There's not many, if any. Like, Josh Allen adapts, he's got a team around him, and they're still performing. He's got a team that's lifting him, that has, especially since Joe Brady took over, lifted him up. So where he doesn't necessarily have to be Superman Josh every single time. Whereas in the Zach Wilson instance, they didn't have anybody around him, and Zach Wilson was trying to survive, right? Yeah, he may have these interceptions, and he may turn the ball over a couple of times a game, but it's not necessarily so much about that as much as the end result, which is the Buffalo Bills are still winning, and he's a very large part of that. And I don't want to say, I know we talked about Jameis Winston earlier, but there was at one point in time where Jameis Winston may have thrown 30 interceptions in a season, but he also threw 30 something touchdowns at 5,000 yards, and the Bucs were winning. Like, you got to take the good with the bad. So instead of highlighting, and this is the message that I'd like to get out to everybody, which is just, instead of highlighting even the Bills haters or the Josh Allen haters or whatever, go ahead, cling to the interceptions. And go ahead. Oh yeah, most turnovers since 2019 or whatever that stupid meme said. You know what else? You know what else has happened since 2019? They won the damn division. They go to the playoffs every year. Josh Allen is still an MVP conversation every year. He's setting team records that haven't been touched in 30 years or more. The team itself is setting records that haven't been touched in 30 years or more. They're in the upper echelon of the NFL when they were in the basement for 17 years before that. Like, perspective, people. Yeah, he threw 2 interceptions, but you know what? He all purpose, like 40 touchdowns, 40 plus touchdowns a year. One person, one of one, has done that. 40 plus touchdowns by himself 4 years in a row. You know who?
John? It
ain't Pat Mahomes. It wasn't Brady. It's Josh Allen.
He ends the regular season leading the NFL in total yards with 4,830 and total touchdowns 44. I understand if he had less turnovers, those numbers would probably be higher. But again, it's the perspective.
It is. You gotta look
leading the league. It's not a conversation of well, if he didn't throw so many interceptions or have fumbles, he could be leading. No. He leads the league. Right. In total yards and total touchdowns.
And I don't want to, and I personally don't want to hear the yeah buts about the turnovers. Like you can miss me with the yeah buts about the turnovers and how many.
Let me yeah but you real quick.
This dude is that dog.
I agree. Let me yeah but you real quick.
I've been saying that since the draft, Ryan. I've been saying it since the draft.
I've been trying to get this in because I want to yeah but you real hard. Yeah, but you know what?
What?
He throws the picks, but then he comes back out in the field. The first half, Josh Allen. Second half, Josh Allen. Two different players.
Yep.
Locked in, ready to go, knows what he has to do, knows what he has to fix, knows what he has to adjust to make those plays. And that's what Josh Allen has done. He has, you know what? You're going to take the good with the bad. Is this something that Joe Brady or the next offensive coordinator of the Buffalo Bills is going to have to work on? Absolutely. But guess what? I guarantee you 10 times out of 10, they'll say, look at, we win the game. Josh has 2 interceptions and 2 touchdowns. Did we win the game? Yeah. That's all that matters. That's all that matters.
That's all that matters at the end of the day. If I had, 20 interceptions a year, but got a chip out of it, I mean, I'm happy. I don't care.
I got to be honest too. I'm hard pressed. I mean, I probably could go back this season and find a handful of games where you're like, yeah, turnovers cost the Bills. Josh Allen's turnovers cost the Bills. But again, give me a whiteboard, give me a marker. Touchdowns that help. Josh Allen's touchdowns that help the Bills win versus Josh Allen's turnovers that help the Bills or cause the Bills to lose. You're going to be happy with the number you get.
Of those 6 losses, maybe a good 3 of those losses, 3 of those 6 might have been the result of Josh Allen turnovers. That's 3 out of 6 losses. There's 11.
We can talk about that. Yeah, we can talk about that at the end of the season too, because that's a very good conversation to have. But I do want to mention it's Josh Allen's 14th career fourth quarter comeback, third most in Bills history, behind Joe Ferguson at 19 and Jim Kelly at 23. Josh Allen, for the 9th time in his career, goes over 300 plus passing yards and 50 plus rushing yards, breaking the NFL record previously held by San Francisco quarterback Steve Young, who did it 8 times. Josh Allen is the first player in NFL history to throw for 350 plus yards, rush for 65 plus yards, and complete 75% of his passes in a regular season game. I mentioned regular season because I'm pretty sure the only other time that happened was the 13 seconds game, which we don't talk about here anymore. Josh Allen also had 2 plus passing touchdowns. That marks the 13th straight game against Miami with 2 plus passing touchdowns, extending his league record for most consecutive games with 2 plus passing touchdowns versus a single opponent.
And may it continue into the next season and beyond, because death, taxes, and the Miami Dolphins eating crow, Miami Dolphins fans eating crow. I am all about that life. So keep on, shine on, you crazy diamond, Josh Allen, you dog.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Hey, speaking of dogs, we got one back in the office here. Wide receiver Stephon Diggs, 7 receptions on 8 targets for 87 yards. John, he played 88% of the snaps. Roughly rubs out to 69 of 78 snaps.
Oh, nice.
Diggs finished the regular season with 107.
You did that purposely.
I saw that and had to add that in there. It is the truth, though. I said, "Oh, John's gonna love this."
I appreciate that.
I was originally just going to say he played 88% of the snaps, and I said, "Well, what's 88? 69? All right, it's got to be in the podcast.
Got to throw it in there somehow."
Diggs finished the regular season with 107 receptions, third most in a single season in franchise history. Note that Stephon Diggs owns all top 4 positions in Buffalo Bills history. Diggs is one of only 4 players in NFL history with 4 straight seasons of 100-plus receptions. Antonio Brown did it 6 straight years, 2013 to 2018. Marvin Harrison, 4 years from 1999 to 2002. And Devontae Adams, 4 seasons. This is currently active from 2020 to 2023. Diggs' 5,372 career receiving yards with Buffalo puts him 4th all-time in franchise history, passing Albert Dubinian, I believe is how you say the name, who had 5,294. And John, Stephon Diggs is 562 yards behind old friend Lee Evans for 3rd all-time in franchise history.
Should get that easily next year.
I want to copy and paste one thing here really quick. We're going to talk about Gabe Davis real fast, because obviously if I say what I'm going to say about someone else, it's not going to make a whole lot of sense if you don't know what happened to Gabe Davis. 0 receptions on 2 targets. He left the game with a non-contact knee injury and did not return. He was seen in street clothes on the sideline after the half. Was reported by NFL Network's Ian Rappaport that he reportedly suffered a PCL sprain that is, quote, not considered major. His status is to be determined for Sunday's game, but has not been ruled out yet. We don't have any updates on injuries today on Tuesday because Sean McDermott said he'll meet with the media on Wednesday to discuss everything. So there are a few other players we'll mention. No update until Wednesday on injuries. It's kind of the blessing and the curse of recording early in the week. We give people time to listen to the podcast, but then we may miss stuff like that. So you win some, you lose some. But stepping up in the absence of Gabe Davis, wide receiver Khalil Shakir had 6 receptions on 6 targets for 105 yards. And John, his speed was on display. His ability to catch the ball in tight spaces, and then he turned on the afterburners. It was impressive to watch Khalil Shakir with the ball in his hand on Sunday night. And honestly, he has been one of those unsung heroes of the Bills offense. He may not have the sexy stat line at the end of the season, but I mean, looking at what he did in the game on Sunday, very important for the Buffalo Bills. I mean, he ended the season 39 receptions, 611 yards, 2 touchdowns. Not incredibly sexy, but guess what? When he's called upon, John, he shows up and he performs.
It's the perfect epitome of, the perfect definition, not epitome, the perfect definition of next man up. When someone goes down, you got to be ready because if your number is called and you're coming off the bench, you're expected to perform, maybe not exactly to that level, but a capable enough level to keep the needle moving. And Khalil Shakir has done just that. So, sometimes it's not about the sexy stat lines as much as it is about the overall body of work and what that work in that time frame meant to that team. Obviously, it translated into several wins. So, great job there, Khalil Shakir. Definitely something to build upon and expand upon during the offseason, OTAs and all of that.
Expand upon the playoffs, my man.
Well, yeah, that too. Yeah, of course, it's good to have there. But I mean, seeing what you have going forward, it's always good to have, amply prepared players to kind of plug and play. And the Buffalo Bills have been great at stockpiling these kinds of talents, building them into their system, and just kind of keeping the needle moving.
Putting a bow on the O here, John. Playing to win, pointed out by Howard Simon on Twitter at 8.
You play to win the game.
Buffalo went for it on 4th and short on their own 35 with 4:05 remaining in the game, which is not a Sean McDermott thing to do. Very incredible. Allen had that incredible 15-yard run on 3rd and 13. Or they went for it, got the first down, and then Allen went on to have an incredible 15-yard run on a 3rd and 13. Those 2 conversions, 2 minutes and 12 seconds off the clock. Again, Buffalo was churning down the field, eating up that clock. I kept saying to myself that Chris Berman tick, 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 tick in my head. And I say it out loud too. If my wife kept a bingo board of things I say during a football game, that's one of them. Cause I'm like, look at, just keep matriculating the ball down the field. I'm a football cliche machine.
Do you do the Chris Berman when you watch baseball? And they hit a home run, I go back.
Sometimes
it's out of here.
Let's be honest. I haven't watched a whole lot of baseball recently because the Red Sox are dog water.
Well, pitchers and catchers don't report for another month anyway. So
thank God. Maybe someone can pitch a 99-mile-an-hour fastball to my head so I can just miss that. Wide receiver Trent Sherfield, 3 receptions on 4 targets for 24 yards. And John, his first touchdown as a member of the Bills against his old team. First touchdown as a member of the Bills, and also it came against his old team is how I should have said that. And what a beauty! It bounced off a helmet, flipped up. The wherewithal to understand time and space, where you're at in the end zone, where the ball's going to land, still catching the ball, making sure both feet are in bounds. Incredible, absolutely.
It was an incredible catch. When I saw that, I was like, it was like, popping up and like, when you're like, but it was just me.
I was like, what the hell's going on here? And then you see the replay and you're like, oh my God, man, those are the kinds of plays that happen to Buffalo, not for Buffalo. That was pretty sick. Great presence of mind, great wherewithal, keeping those feet in bounds, like you said. There was no disputing that. We hear over and over again, what is a catch? Well, that was a catch. That is a catch. Yeah, absolutely. Tight end Dawson Knox, 2 receptions on 3 targets for 22 yards and a touchdown. His 22nd career touchdown catches, second most by a Buffalo tight end to only Pete Metzelaars, who has 25.
My boy.
Dog. This touchdown also ties Allen and Knox, the combo for 7th most in franchise history, with Jim Kelly and also Pete Metzelaars. So
I gotta say, I genuinely I am a huge vintage junkie, and I love vintage football, and particularly vintage players from my youth, 80s, 90s.
The names, man.
The names and the Buffalo Bills teams of the 80s, 90s, and stuff like that. Every time you mention a name like that, I'm like, oh, I remember him. I loved him. It was great. So
we got a few more coming up, buddy. We got a few more coming up for you. First off, wide receiver Deontay Hardy, the play of the game that really turned the tide in Buffalo's favor. I mean, again, it was building, it was bubbling, and this is the what popped the bubble and kind of just pushed all momentum in Buffalo's favor. A 96-yard punt return for a touchdown. It's his second career punt return for a touchdown, first for Buffalo since January 3rd, 2021. It is the longest punt return touchdown in franchise history, surpassing Keith Moody's 91-yard punt return for a touchdown on October 23rd, 1977 versus Cleveland.
Well, I appreciate that name, but it was a little before my time.
When asked after the game, Hardy said, quote, "I blacked out. I can't tell you what happened. I just seen a crease. I hit it. And next thing you know, I was free." The best part about this week 18 was all about incentives, all about getting people their paper, man. And the return touchdown raised Hardy's yards per return to 12.4 for the 2023 season, locking him into a $250,000 bonus.
That's beautiful.
Which is wonderful. I absolutely love that for him. Tight end Dalton Kincaid, 7 receptions on 8 targets for 84 yards. He finished the regular season with 73 receptions, surpassing tight end again Pete Metzelaars, who had 68 receptions in 1993 for most receptions in a season by a Buffalo tight end. He's also the 11th player in Buffalo history to have 70 receptions in a season. Also, Kincaid becomes one of 4 rookie tight ends since 1960 with 70-plus receptions in a season. Sam Laporta in Detroit had 86 this year, also on that list. Keith Jackson, Philadelphia Eagle tight end, had 81 in 1988. And Jeremy Shockey, Giants tight end, had 74.
Oh, man, I remember him.
2002.
He was kind of the standard mark, the benchmark for tight end. Jeremy Shockey was during his time a little bit there before he fell off. But anywho.
And now I'm going to run through some stats real quick here, so that way we can get to a quick commercial break and talk more football here. Buffalo's offensive line of left tackle Deion Dawkins, left guard Connor McGovern, center Mitch Morse, right guard Osiris Torrance, and right tackle Spencer Brown started all 17 regular season games this season. I didn't have to say season, that was redundant, marking the first time this has happened in Buffalo since the entire starting line started every game in 1989. Also, if you were listening closely when I said center, I almost went to hockey mode there for Mitch Morse.
My heart almost skipped a beat because when you say Mitch Morse and
Mitch McConnell, the starting center for the Buffalo Bills.
That's exactly where I was going, and I'm like, oh, if he were there, he'd probably have been freezing. That's not something
he probably would have had a stroke and got Josh Allen sacked.
Anyways,
running back Ty Johnson left the game with a concussion, did not return. No update available at this time. Breaking down the D, cornerback Christian Benford had an interception, a very nice interception. Second pick of the season and second consecutive game with a takeaway. Taylor Rapp, safety, had his game-sealing pick, was his 10th career interception, first with the Buffalo Bills. Tyrell Dodson, a big loss linebacker, left the game with a shoulder injury, did not return. Cornerback Rasul Douglas left the game with a knee injury, did not return. Sound like he may have been able to come back on the game, but precautionary, they kept him out. Buffalo's defense had 1 sack, 4 tackles for loss, 5 pass deflections, and 3 quarterback hits. In the second half of the game, John, Miami had 5 drives, 17 plays for 47 yards with just 3 first downs, 4 punts, 1 interception, 3 3-and-outs, 2 4-and-outs, all against the number 1 ranked offense coming into the game. And also during Buffalo's 5-game win streak, they held Miami, Dallas, and Kansas City under 20 points each. They had 4 chances to give up game-winning or game-tying drives and got a stop all 4 times. And also, they've allowed only 16.8 points per game and 277 yards per game during the streak. Also, Buffalo recorded their 54th sack of the season on Sunday, which tied them for second most in team history, also accomplished in 2014. The club record was 57 in 2013. And John, the last thing before the commercial break, at Andy Provin, I hope I pronounced that correctly, the Buffalo Bills are galvanized every season by a mid-season heartbreaking loss to an NFC team. Over the last 4 years, the Bills are 22-0. After losing a midseason heartbreaking game to an NFC team. 2020, they lost to the Cardinals. That was
that was the Fail Mary.
The Hail Murray.
Or no, the Hail Murray. I'm sorry. Not Hail Mary was the Seattle game.
They finished 6-0 after that in 2021.
I remember watching that game. I was with. It was during the COVID season, and I was with my buddy, Mr. Paul, close personal friend of mine, one of the charter members of the Bills Mafia. Even I would argue. And I remember us sitting there, just staring at the television when that happened. And we had the same puzzled, stunned looks on our faces that Josh Allen had that day, staring at the TV. And I remember that vividly because that was a sharp turnaround from there. I remember even us recording podcasts about it.
Yep.
And just that one of the ones you have listed here, that one is the one that still sticks with me as like a real turning point, I think, for not just the Buffalo Bills, but the career of Josh Allen as well.
2021, they lose at Tampa Bay. That was the last time they lost in December or January. They finished 4-0. 2022, they lose that close game to Minnesota, where Minnesota came back incredibly. The Bills end up finishing 7-0. And this year, they lose at Philadelphia. They finish 5-0. So again, when the schedule comes out, I guess I'm going to pick the time late in the season where the Buffalo Bills are going to lose to an NFC team and then be unstoppable. But John, with that being said, we've done a lot of talking already.
Yes,
we're going to take a quick commercial break, and we'll be back with more Trust the Podcast here on the Gear Radio Network right after this. And we're back here on Trust the Podcast, our second of the three big things. I'm going to run through this quickly just because of time. But
yes.
Black Monday strikes again. Washington fires head coach Ron Rivera, 26-40-1 with the team. Atlanta fires head coach Arthur Smith, 21-30 with Atlanta. Carolina fires their GM, rightfully so, after that big steamy dog shit trade he made with Chicago, which gave them the first overall pick this year. Jacksonville fired defensive coordinator Mike Caldwell and all of their assistants after an epic collapse. John, New York Times, the playoff simulator predictor, whatever, had the Jacksonville Jaguars at 99% playoff probability after they started 8-3 based on 280,000 plus simulations. They ended up missing the playoffs. This is the one I wanted to highlight. This is the one I want to highlight quickly, John. The dysfunction in the Meadowlands. The New York Giants announced the firings of special team coordinator Thomas McGaughey, I believe is how you say it, and offensive line coach Bobby Johnson. Running back coach Jeff Nixon was hired by Syracuse to be their offensive coordinator, and strength coach Craig Fitzgerald was hired by the Florida Gators. Hours after confirming, this is from Joe Shane and from, I'm completely blanking on his name. I'm so embarrassed. The head coach of the Giants, confirming the offensive coordinator Mike Kafka and DC Wink Martindale were expected to be back for 2024. It was reported that Martindale is stepping down as the New York Giants defensive coordinator, and it's Brian Dable's the head coach.
Brian Dable.
That. There was some talk of infighting throughout the season. Pretty embarrassing look to say everyone's coming back, and then he goes, "Well, actually, no, I'm not. I'm leaving. See you later."
Yeah, and it almost makes me wonder how New York Giants football is going to look next year. This year wasn't really the best year and the best look for them. Year two, the Brian Dable system there. I'm wondering if year three it's going to actually regress a little bit more now that there's so much turnover. And I think year three next year will be a very, very big year for the Maras to decide whether or not Dable is indeed their guy that's going to take them to the next level. It's really going to depend too on how well they do in the offseason. Can they lure the Russell Wilsons of the world to bring them there? Danny Dimes ain't the guy.
Well, is Daniel Jones your guy? That's the first conversation. Then
he's not.
Do you re-sign Saquon Barkley? Do you try to go out and improve defensive? Like there's so many holes on that team. Who knows?
Right. Yeah. And let's be real. Danny Dimes, he's not that dude. I would rather see them sign Saquon another 2 to 3 years because he's kind of getting up there running back age wise, but still has stuff left in the tank. I think he's of the two. But then again, are they able to? Because they did give Danny Dimes some money to remain there, and he's just not being there.
We'll have to do a BLTD offseason podcast and kind of break all that stuff down because there's a lot of meat on that bone for sure.
Absolutely.
Our third of the three big things here, it's changed this week. Lunging towards the Lombardi, brought to you by Go Frost Yourself.
Go Frost Yourself, ladies and gentlemen. Located in Rochester, New York, they do what other local bakeries do not. They bake from scratch, creating recipes themselves and using the best fresh ingredients that they can find to create delicious flavors for customers daily. Molly and Jen, Hi, Molly. Hi, Jen. They have worked tirelessly to create what Go Frost Yourself has become today, and their passion can be tasted in the items that they bake. Oh my, they're so tasty. When you find yourself looking for an item for a special occasion, or maybe you just want to try their incredible cinnamon rolls, if you are local, please visit Go Frost Yourself storefront at 2544 Ridgeway Avenue, or Pat Mahomes, take it away. GoFrostYourself.com.
I liked it. That was impressive. That was very impressive there.
I've had good feedback about my makeshift Pat Mahomes voice. I don't know why it's sticking, but it appears to be. So we'll just ride it until the
yeah. I mean, I love it. I'm not mad about it at all. And I mean, at this point too, by the end of the podcast,
it's endeared Pat Mahomes, and it's made Pat Mahomes look in a different light. You look at him like, yeah, okay, he's a pain in the ass in the football field. Oh, but he's so cute in the podcast form there.
Well, I mean, now that I hear you in that, every time I see it, I'm like, oh yeah, this is John. It cracks me up. So, looking,
I'm happy to have ruined Pat Mahomes for people.
He ruined it for himself. Buffalo finished the regular season, John, with the best record against this playoff field at 5-1, with the only loss coming against Philadelphia in overtime. That's very interesting.
Yeah, it's very interesting.
In the AFC, here are the matchups we're looking at this weekend. You've got Baltimore with the bye. You've got Pittsburgh at Buffalo. We'll talk about that in a minute. Miami going to Kansas City. It's expected to be very cold there. And then Cleveland at Houston, which may be the low-key potential for game of the week, I think, just because you don't know what to expect, but anything can happen there.
Anything can happen. I wonder if Mike McDaniel's going to wear a shirt wishing it were colder in Kansas City when he's there, because
he should wear a shirt that says, "God damn it, I'm cold."
That would be hilarious. You know what? If anybody pulled that off, he could pull that off, I think.
Yeah, I would agree with that. It's really funny, though. I like the guy. Very endearing. He's got a great story. A lot of stuff people can relate to. But when they lose, the shtick gets old very quickly.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's when they were
all fun and games until you lose.
When they were whooping ass earlier in the season and beating all the bad teams, it was fun. It was hilarious. But now it's just like, okay, but how are you going to beat a team that has a winning record that isn't the Dallas Cowboys?
Right. Exactly.
In the NFC, the 49ers have the 1 seed and the bye. You've got Green Bay heading to Dallas.
Oh,
the Rams heading to Detroit. You've got Matt Stafford playing.
You imagine? Could you just imagine? Let me verbalize this, because I know y'all are thinking about this. Could you imagine Matt Stafford knocking the Detroit Lions out of the playoffs?
So, John, let me put it this way. In some alternative universe, or the moment that Matt Stafford was drafted by the Detroit Lions, a fan somewhere probably said to themselves, to their friends, to their loved ones, or just internally, this quarterback is going to play in the first playoff game at Ford Field. You can lock it in.
Right.
Little did they know.
They
know that Matt Stafford is going to play in the first playoff game at Ford Field, but he comes in as the opposing quarterback with a Super Bowl ring already in his back pocket.
It's insane.
Looking at it that way,
looking
at it that way kind of makes you, when they talk about the NFL, and again, I don't want to go off too far here, but when they talk about and they joke about the NFL being written by Hollywood and it's a script, dude, I don't know how much more of a script you can have than Green Bay going back to Dallas and running back the Des Bryant game. You've got the Rams and
with Dallas having having Green Bay's old coach.
That too as well. Them. Yeah. Looking at the Rams in Detroit, there's so many storylines there. You've got Philadelphia going to Tampa Bay. Can Philadelphia stop the bleeding? Is Baker Mayfield the next quote unquote franchise quarterback for the Buccaneers? You've got Cleveland and Houston. Joe Flacco. Is he for real, or was it just a mirage? Same with Houston. Is it for real, or is it just a mirage?
You've got I think Miami. They're for real with CJ Stroud.
I don't disagree, but again, you've got Miami and Kansas City. Can Miami right the ship and use that offensive firepower to defeat a Kansas City team that has struggled mightily this season. And then you've got Pittsburgh versus Buffalo. Can the Bills streak continue against a Pittsburgh Steelers team that we're going to talk about here in just a minute that has done a lot to make this happen? They are much like the Bills in terms of they had to play their way in and didn't control their destiny for a while. But one thing, John, before we get there, the first time ever this has ever happened, all three Lake Erie teams, the Bills, the Browns, and the Lions, have made the playoffs in the same season again for the first time ever. Now, what I want from you,
for me,
shot out of a cannon, prediction for the Super Bowl right now.
Prediction for the Super Bowl right now?
Gun to head.
Wow. Baltimore, San Fran.
I've got Buffalo, and I'm going to say San Fran, just because, again, all depending on the health of Christian McCaffrey and his calf, that he won't have played for a bit. I think it's very difficult to match up for anybody in the NFC to match up against the 49ers. In the AFC, the thing about it is this, and I am rooting wholeheartedly for this to happen, John. I want to see Kansas City beat Miami and come to Buffalo next week. I want to see Cleveland beat Houston and Cleveland roll into Baltimore. Joe Flacco and the Cleveland Browns rolling back into Baltimore, and I want to see Joe Flacco beat the Baltimore Ravens. If
Miami won, would they come to Buffalo?
They would be the 6. They're the 6, so the lowest seed would go over. So then if Miami wins, Miami goes to Baltimore. If Kansas City wins, Cleveland or Houston goes to Baltimore.
Gotcha. Okay.
So again, I want to see Joe Flacco into Baltimore. That offense is powerful. Joe Flacco is able to hit all the right buttons. That defense is clicking. I mean, no matter what, in the AFC, the Baltimore Ravens are going to have a tough go, even though they are very good. They are going to have a tough go facing up against the Texans defense, the Browns defense, the Bills defense. I mean, Pittsburgh, their defense is hurt. We'll talk about it in a minute. But again, I'm all in on Buffalo because I've not seen the Buffalo Bills come into the playoffs hotter in my lifetime.
I the only thing that would concern me about Buffalo would be, at some point, can they keep going with the steam not running out? They've had some close calls there against teams that they really had no business competing with them in the past couple of weeks with Los Angeles and who else?
But when they play down to their opponent, remember they also play up to their opponent.
That's true. I think like I said, Baltimore I think is probably going to be the toughest challenge for Buffalo in this playoff. I think they're in sync. I don't see Pittsburgh, Miami, Kansas City, Cleveland, or Houston being better than Buffalo. Baltimore though. They would scare me. On the NFC side, I say San Francisco because, again, Christian McCaffrey, he's been kind of lights. He's really helped that team and helped Brock Purdy as well kind of come into their own, right? But being at home, having home field advantage there, San Francisco, nice weather. You're the vibes right there. All the tradition there, but I also wouldn't be surprised on the NFC side to see those doggone Rams make a run and get into the Super Bowl as well. I think they've been playing pretty hot too, arguably kind of similar to Buffalo. So if there was a Buffalo Los Angeles Super Bowl, I could see that one too as a possibility. But as far as my prediction as of right now, I'm going to stick with Baltimore, San Fran.
And I'm going to put this out there because I know Mr. Perez, if he made it this far in the podcast, or if he even turned the podcast on.
Dallas going to let him down again.
I think if Dallas continues to play at home, Dallas has the cheat code to make the Super Bowl. But here's the thing. If Dallas has to go to San Francisco, which is the only time they'd have to travel, I don't think they're making it out alive.
Oh, no, not at all. Not at all. I don't think so. So yeah, you're absolutely right. So long as the Cowboys are playing at home in Jerryland, they're very, 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 very difficult to beat. So they're hoping for San Fran to bottom out in the second round. And if they keep winning, they're in. It's
call me crazy. Call me crazy. If the NFC goes through Dallas, I think Dallas makes the Super Bowl.
I don't disagree with that. I would say
again, there's just something. It's been like this forever. I feel like John, but there's just something different this year about the Dallas Cowboys playing at home. I don't know what it is. I honestly, I can't quantify it. I can't explain it. It's just straight vibes.
Well,
The Dallas Cowboys are a
right now,
completely different team when they're playing at home.
They are, but I could tell you right now, if they make it to the Super Bowl and Buffalo does, you are going to have very likely 96% of America rooting for Buffalo.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of Cowboys fans around the world, but guess what? Can I say it? Am I allowed to say it, John?
Say it. Go ahead.
Fuck the Cowboys.
Ooh.
You heard it here first. Say something. Anyway.
And now look ahead.
Yeah, looking ahead to week 19. Don't get it twisted, John. I had to go back and edit the podcast notes. It's not wild card weekend anymore, John. It's super wild card weekend.
Super wild card weekend.
Super wild card weekend. The Buffalo Bills versus the Pittsburgh Steelers. The joke here was, John, that Buffalo has bent over backwards and played in all sorts of time slots this season. So the only way to reward them appropriately would be giving them the 1 p.m. game on Sunday. So again, kickoff in Buffalo
right around the time when pro wrestling show, my pro wrestling appearance is happening, and most of the Bills fans that would otherwise come there and chant JC Penney in my direction are going to be home watching this game. So thanks Roger, appreciate that.
Fair, I get that. I understand that. For your personal brand, that is a hit.
Bastard.
Kickoff Sunday, January 14th at 1 p.m. on CBS. Pittsburgh 10-7. They are the 7th seed in the AFC. Pittsburgh quarterback Mason Rudolph, 3-0 in starts this season. He has beaten Cincinnati, Seattle, and a lesser Baltimore team who was sitting some key players. But the big news coming into the game, Pittsburgh linebacker TJ Watt suffered a grade 2 MCL sprain in the Week 18 victory over Baltimore. He has officially been ruled out for Sunday, John. And Pittsburgh, without TJ Watt in their lineup, 1-10. Not very good.
Not very good at all.
I don't want to go on record to say that I'm good with numbers, but I know that's bad. Sources
pretty bad.
Also say the absolute best case scenario for Watt will be to be able to play in 2 weeks with a brace. So even if Pittsburgh does happen to win, TJ Watt's not going to be at 100% for quite some time. With that being said, John, before I get your thoughts on the game, the matchup predictor, 76.6% of America believes the Buffalo Bills will defeat the Pittsburgh Steelers, according to ESPN Analytics. John, what say you? How you feeling about this game, my man?
Yeah, Buffalo's going to win. It's just, I'm sorry. Look, I love Coach Tomlin. I love what he's done with the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think he's an excellent coach. I don't care what the pundits or what, anti-Steeler fan or Eagle fan might say about that. Coach Tomlin, genuinely one of the greatest coaches, in my opinion. He will be a Hall of Famer. Never had a losing season at all. Took this team, coached this team up multiple times, especially in the past couple of years where they've lost key players, and he's still coaching them up and he's still doing their thing. And he did it even this year, losing what's his name, Kenny Pickett, and then you had Money Mitch for a couple of cup of coffee there, I believe, and now Mason Rudolph. He's been able to make chicken soup out of chicken shit for quite a while, but in the same. This is going to be a year, and I hate to break it to you, Steelers fans, you're going to have to celebrate the fact that your team made the playoffs as the highlight of your season, because it's coming to an end on Sunday against this Buffalo Bills team that are just red hot. To take someone else's point from ESPN a few weeks ago, I think it might have been Swagoo or Marcus Spears or Damian Woody, that said no one wants to face the Buffalo Bills in the playoffs, and without your best linebacker there, with whom that stat appropriately puts out, you're 1-10 without, about to be 1-11 because it ain't happening. Sorry.
Do me a favor. Go back and watch the Miami Dolphins game. Watch the first half. Watch the second half. Something happened at halftime where playoff Josh was activated. Mm-hmm. The not giving a shit, take no prisoners, run for 15 yards on 3rd and 13. Like he was like,
for all intents and purposes, Brett Favre on both sides.
It's almost like he gets locked in even further.
Mm-hmm.
And
He was
he's
like-
just so hard to stop.
Well, in the beginning of the game, he was like idiot Favre, where, he makes a great play and then, he'll throw an interception. But then, and then the second half, he was like the good Favre on the field.
But here's the point that I want to make, John.
And did that too. So, but yeah, go ahead.
You've got that. You've got playoff Josh.
Mm-hmm.
Air Bud on steroids, my boy. Air Bud with some helium in him. I don't know, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
On top of that, you got to stop the run game.
Mm-hmm.
On top of that, which again, I don't know if they're going to rush Ty Johnson back. If they don't, guess what? They've got Leonard Fournette in that backfield as well with James Cook. Good luck there. Good luck with an extra motivated Leonard Fournette who knows how to win championships. That's why they call him Lombardi Lenny. On top of that, John, if you can stop that offense, you got to beat that defense.
Right. And right now that defense, they made the adjustments that they needed to make, and they've kept the team in the game, which is all
they're going to get you. They're going to get you one way or the other. And John, like we've been saying since, I don't know, November, I'm actually going to cut myself off there really quick because I want to ask you a question. Yes or no? What's crazier about Mike Tomlin? What's crazier about Mike Tomlin? That he's been coaching the Steelers since 2007 or that he has not won a playoff game since 2016?
That he's not won a playoff game since 2016.
You'd think
to
otherwise,
be perfectly
right?
honest with you. I would say that I don't think it's crazy that he's been coaching the Steelers for so long, because in the Pittsburgh Steelers' entire history, they've only had 3 head coaches. Chuck Noll,
John,
Bill Cowher, and Mike Tomlin, or at least in the Rooney era. I can't remember if the Steelers predated the Rooneys, but in the Rooney era, it's been Chuck Noll, Bill Cowher, and Mike Tomlin. So that doesn't surprise me. What does surprise me would be the playoff being winless since 2016.
I'm trying to do the math here in my head here. I believe I was a sophomore in high school when Mike Tomlin became the head coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Mm-hmm.
And now I'm going to have 2 kids.
Well, how old?
By the time next season rolls around. So,
well, all right. You know what? If we're going to be talking about the holistic view there, Bill Belichick has been the head coach of the New England Patriots. He may not be past this season, but we'll talk about that at another time and date. But he's been there in place since 2000. Where were you then?
I was 9.
Yeah. So like literally more 3/4 of your life.
So if you want to know why I needed to go to therapy, Bill Belichick, most likely.
That's very fair. That's
hey,
very
also
fair.
real quick, Twitter found out that Adam Beasley, this is pretty funny. Adam Beasley of the ProFootballNetwork.com tweeted on September 11th, "Congratulations to the 2023 AFC East champion Miami Dolphins." And the tweet of the week, "You fucked up. You besmirched Sean McDermott on a special day."
Well, there you go. You know
With
what?
that being said,
play dumb games, win dumb prizes.
Hey, man. With that being said, John.
Oh, is it time?
What have we been saying since November?
We have been saying that
no one circles the wagons like the Buffalo Bills.
All the Bills got to do, it doesn't matter if it's pretty, doesn't matter if it's ugly, doesn't matter if it's pretty ugly. Just win, baby.
Just win, baby. Hey, no pressure on you, Buffalo, but I did this last week, and I'm going to keep that karma going this week. If the Buffalo Bills do not win, next episode is our season finale. You don't want that on your heads, do you, Buffalo? You know what you need to do. No pressure. That's that Trust the Podcast karma. If it works this week, Ryan, it's going to be a thing.
I'm all for it, man. I am all for it. With that being said, for John Cimino, I am Ryan Wolfe. As always, we are Trust the Podcast.
You're not.
We'll catch you same time, same place next week, my friends. As always, thank you for tuning in, and go Bills.
Ciao, ciao, everybody.
1, 2, 3, 4.
The preceding presentation has been brought to you by the Gear Network.